أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على رسوله المصطفى وخاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين ورحمة الله وبركاته. The Prophet ﷺ said, "The intention of the believer is greater or better than his action." Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us another opportunity to continue with the commemoration of this holy event. And I wanted to, before delving into the topic of today, make a small point of reference to the ziyarah which I recited at the beginning of this lecture. Something that is noteworthy and something that we should pay attention to when we're reciting ziyarahs, salutations or greetings to the Imams, especially ones that we have received from other Imams. We have to keep in mind that every ziyarah contains two aspects. The first one is that of connection, of practicality, something to do with our action. We recite it in order to connect to the Imam alayhi, to connect to him spiritually and to visit him and visit his grave physically. The second aspect that is contained in the ziyarah is the intellectual aspect. The Imams have incorporated teachings in these ziyarat and in their prayers and supplications, because it is important for an individual who wants to send his greetings to the Imam and speak to the Imam that he knows who he is speaking to. The first condition for us to value what we're doing is to know what we're doing. And when we're speaking with an individual, there's a big difference when we know that who we're speaking to, let's say, is a governor somewhere or someone who's very noble in an area, than if we didn't know who he is. So before we begin, or at the beginning of our connection with the Imam through ziyarah, the Imams define who the Imam is. They show us who he is. So it begins with saying, "Peace be upon you," or "Greetings be upon you, O Hussein." And then it describes Imam Hussein as being the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. "Peace be upon you, O son of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Peace be upon you, O son of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Peace be upon you, O son of Fatima." So this indication or this reference to the Imams is to show and indicate that this individual who is Hussein, the son of Ali alayhi salam, is an individual who's connected through lineage to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and direct lineage. His mother, Fatima al-Zahra, is the direct daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which makes him the first grandson of the Prophet. And it is not that family and blood relations that should matter mostly. But in this case, we have both blood relation and we have nobility as well. Because Imam Hussein was a figure who was not just related to the Prophet through his blood, but also through his actions and through his spiritual status. So this is something to keep in mind whenever we recite ziyarahs or even supplications. We have to keep in mind that the Imams are also trying to instill in us some teachings and understandings through the intellect and not just through action. Now, going back to the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the intention of the believer is greater than his action or better than his action. Sometimes there are principles that the Prophet or the Imams alayhi salam give to us And they're very broad and very general principles that we are supposed to take and apply in our lives. Now, where does this specific principle apply? For the most part, we can realize that it applies to our ethical decisions and our moral decisions. In fact, every decision that we make in life has to be weighed on this scale. We have to see whether the intention is what counts or the action is what counts. And this is not something that's peculiar to the Islamic nation or the Muslims. This is a dilemma that every human being also goes through. And you find a lot of times when someone does something and it goes wrong, they usually justify it by saying, well, I didn't mean any wrong. I only meant well. But this is the outcome of my action. So what is it that we have to use here to judge our actions? Is just having a good intention sufficient for us? Do I intend well and just do anything no matter what the outcome is? Or is there also responsibility to make sure that the outcome that we sought for is also a good outcome and not just suffice with the intention as being good? Well, I wanted to give a number of different scenarios. But before doing that, I wanted to speak about an individual who also had this dilemma. An individual who is very well known to the world. An individual who we consider to be a man of nobility and peacemaking and a role model for ethical conduct. This individual is Gandhi. Gandhi had made a lot of speeches throughout his life, and they've collected them in over 100 volumes, I believe. They've been translated into English. And throughout these volumes, there's a lot of speeches that he made. And in a number of different speeches, when he addresses the people in different situations, he tries to give them ethical principles to work by. Because when a person is trying to achieve something, he needs to know what scale he should use to measure his action. There has to be a motive. There has to be something that pushes this individual. So in one instance, Gandhi says, in any examination of moral conduct, the intention is the chief ingredient. So whenever we have an action that we're doubting whether it's something that we should do or not do, let's say, the uprising against the British at that time, or something that involves a particular decision, maybe something that went wrong, maybe a mistake that happened with a bad outcome. And there's emphasis here on the intention being the chief ingredient. In another speech, Gandhi says the following, and I'm quoting him over here. A man must be judged by his action, not the motive prompting it. So this kind of sounds like the reverse of the first one. The first one, he says the intention is the chief ingredient. But in this one, he's saying that a man must be judged by his action, not by the motive prompting it. Now, we don't have to go into details of what could have motivated Gandhi to say the first one and what motivated him to say the second one. There could be factors that he wanted to justify something that happened in real life that he wanted to justify, and this was the method that he went by justifying it. But we're not concerned with that. We're concerned by the principle that he's giving, and we don't want to concern ourselves with what he specifically is saying, but I just wanted to show that this is a dilemma that is experienced by all individuals. So when it comes to our decisions, we can divide them into 4 categories. If we divide them into, 2 categories, the intention versus the action, and then those can be divided into 4 possibilities. We can have a good intention and a bad action. We can have a bad intention and a good action. We can have a good intention and a good action, and we can have a bad intention and a bad action. And what I mean by action here is the outcome of our action, basically. So let me give examples of each of these possibilities, and then we can try to analyze what is it that Islam wants us to do? What is it that the Muslims have to do? What ethical principle do we go by as Muslims and believers in Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam? The first possibility, the good intention with a good outcome. Now, there's millions of examples we can think of for this category. And one simple one is basically if I want to help a needy individual and I give them money and my intention is good, my intention is to help that person, and I do carry out that help, and the individual benefits and his life is improved. So this is a good intention and it resulted in a good outcome. Now, the question we can ask in this scenario is whether the action we take is the best action and not only a good one. So it's true that we took a specific action with a good intention and there was some benefit to this action. We did help. We did assist the individual. But the question which rises in this specific situation is whether the action that we performed was the best action that could have been done. So basically, let's say I had this money and I wanted to give it to this individual to help him. Let's say I had $100 and this person's life improved by $100. He was able to live a more prosperous life and difficulties subsided. Now, this money, I had an option to put it somewhere else as well, right? As soon as I have money to give, I have lots of different possibilities where to invest them, where to put them. I could put them in my bank. I can invest them in a business. I can give them to this individual. I can throw them away. I can do whatever I want with them. There are many different possibilities. One of the good things that I could do with them is give that poor individual. Now, there might be another course of action that might even be more beneficial than this. So, for example, if I give this $100 to a specific, or I invest it, let's say, in a specific area, and then in 1 month, I get tenfold of that money, and then I'm able to help 10 families. Which decision should I make? So we have different possibilities here, different options. Are we only looking for having a good intention and a good outcome, or are we looking for the best outcome? There's a big difference between these two. Another issue is another possibility that we can have is whether I should pay money to this poor individual, or maybe I should build certain areas that would open up job opportunities and careers, for example. Or maybe I should invest in that individual getting a degree, and that way he can produce his own money instead of relying on people donating to him. So it's true that giving money to that poor individual might be a good thing, but it might not be the best thing. So are we supposed to only care about doing good things, or are we supposed to be looking for doing the best things? This is the question that we're going to keep in mind. The second scenario is having a good intention with a bad outcome. And this happens a lot as well. Sometimes we don't pay attention to it, but we tend not to be harsh on ourselves when it comes to this, because we usually justify our actions, even if we had bad outcomes, by our intention. We say, well, I meant well. I had a good intention when I did this. I didn't mean for this bad thing to happen. One example that maybe not a lot of people think about is when a mother, in order to protect her child from harm, she does it so excessively that this child eventually develops excessive fears, develops disorders in himself, becomes independent on others, is unable to face challenges in life. And we see this happening, throughout many families, where the mother, with her good intention, trying to protect her child from harm, trying to protect her child from going into danger, this overprotection ends up harming the child. So the intention is good, but the outcome of the action is bad. And there are a lot of studies that suggest that overprotective parenting styles negatively impact behavior in the long run, despite the parents' intention for their children to have the best life that can be offered. So this is something to keep in mind. The third scenario is having a bad intention, but a good outcome. So let's say, an individual sets a trap in the woods or somewhere out there. And he wants to, perform a prank, record it, put it online, and, let it go viral. And when he set up the prank, And having someone, falling into a trap, it's not really a good thing. The person could be hurt. It could even lead to serious damage to an individual. So when he set up the prank, there was someone running, and he ends up falling into the trap. Later, they discovered that the person that fell into the trap was someone who was a murderer or a robber, a thief. And now he got trapped. They were able to catch him, take him to court, and deal with him. Now, the intention was bad. The intention was very selfish. He set up a prank involving, trapping an individual just to get some fame and likes and views on YouTube and social media. The intention was bad. But the outcome of his action, which he didn't intend, was a good outcome. Another example, a reckless driver is driving, about 60 miles above the speed limit, let's say, 100 kilometers over the speed limit. He ends up crashing into a house. He doesn't die. He gets out of the car. He sees a child drowning, and he ends up, saving that child. It was a bad intention. He did not intend to save that child. He was speeding up. He was racing with other people, and that ended up with a good outcome. So that's scenario number 3. Now, the fourth scenario is having a bad intention and bad outcome. We can think of many examples for that. So what is it that we have to judge ourselves by? And how do we judge others as well? Well, when it comes to ourselves, we usually focus on our intentions being good. We hardly judge ourselves based on our actions. But when it comes to other people, we usually judge them by their actions. We tend not to refer to their intentions. When it involves us, we care about the intention side. When it involves others, we care about the action side. If someone does something, oh, look what they did. Well, maybe they didn't mean it, but we don't look at that. But if we do something and it was bad, we would immediately defend ourselves. Well, I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean any bad with it. I didn't mean any harm. So there's a discrepancy in dealing with what is correct conduct and what is incorrect conduct, how we should judge conduct of ourselves and judge the conduct of others. And when we see that there's this discrepancy that exists, then we know that we are not being consistent in our judgment. And maybe when we judge our intentions as being good and justify our bad actions, that principle that we're using might not be the correct one because it's more egocentric and more selfish in a sense. And when we see ourselves judging others by their action and not their intention, we should know that this is also maybe stemming from misjudgment or unfairness. Now, if we come to the Quran, what does the Quran say about our actions and how we should behave? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He describes what He created and how He created it, He says, الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقَهُ, who made beautiful all that He created. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He not only created things, God could have just created this world and ended it there. God says that He created things and that He beautified everything that He created. As Muslims, we are ordered to imitate God. Our objective is to become godly individuals. So if God tries to beautify everything He did, then as individuals who are believers in God, whose objective is to imitate God and become godlike in our actions, then we should attempt to beautify everything that we're doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in another verse, قَالَ يَا مُوسَى إِنِّي اصْطَفَيْتُكَ عَلَى النَّاسِ بِرِسَالَاتِي وَبِكَلَامِي فَخُذْ مَا آتَيْتُكَ وَكُنْ مِنَ الشَّاكِرِينَ وكتبنا له في الألواح من كل شيء موعظة وتفصيلا لكل شيء فخذها بقوة وأمر قومك يأخذ بأحسنها سأريكم دار الفاسقين. God says, O Moses, verily I have chosen thee above mankind through my messages and my speaking unto thee. So God is talking about selecting Moses as a prophet. So take that which I have given thee and be among the thankful. And we wrote for him upon the tablets an exhortation concerning all things, and an elaboration of all things. Take hold of them with strength, and command thy people to hold to the best of them. So this is not just taking the teachings of God, but holding on to the best of the teachings. أحسنها يأخذ بأحسنها. There's always this moral imperative, this command from God that He wants us, and the Quran is replete with this idea. Always أحسن ما كانوا يعملون, the better, the best, the most beautiful. So the Muslim individual should not allow himself to live in this world just, being sufficient with whatever is good in this life. No, what we should try to do is, if we have two courses of action, we should always strive to take the better course of action, the best course of action, and not suffice with, I did good. I think, this was a good thing that I did. No, if we have two options, we should look for the best option, the more beautiful option. And this happens a lot, when someone, for example, donates money. And, honestly, if we look at this example of the poor individual, if you donate money to a poor individual, and I'm not discouraging, giving money to the poor, but I'm saying that if you're able to provide a career opportunity to this individual, would that be much better, or would allowing him to continue living in that poverty and relying on other people's money be a better option? Well, maybe giving him a career and giving him an opportunity and his family an opportunity to be able to, produce their own money and rely on themselves and become independent individuals, maybe that's more honorable and better for us to do than just to donate to them. So the better option usually requires more effort and it's more difficult for individuals. And we usually try to choose the easy way out. We think that, let me just give the money to the poor individual and then we just end it over there because it doesn't require much work. But the other one would require for us to really study our situation, our communities, and try to understand what the best course of action we have to take in order to better their lives. This needs a lot of studying, a lot of efforts, put into that and whatnot. If we look at another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الَّذِينَ يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقَوْلَ فَيَتَّبِعُونَ أَحْسَنَهُ أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ هَدَاهُمُ اللَّهُ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. So give glad tidings to my servants who listen to the word, then follow what is most beautiful of it. It is they whom God has guided. It is they who are the possessors of intellect. God is speaking about two attributes over here. Guidance, those who follow the most beautiful of the word, and they are possessors of intellect. A person who is a possessor of intellect, meaning that his mind, he's a person who is a wary person. An intellectual individual is someone who would always choose the best of actions and not suffice with a good action. So when it comes to, for example, debating people of other faiths, let's say we have to choose, we're living in a world of connectivity. We have people living amongst us that are from different faiths. So do we debate them? Or do we try to understand each other's faiths and have a better understanding of each other and therefore build our respect for one another? Which one is a better action to take? Well, the intention might be good. I'm debating a non-Muslim in order to, defeat him and elevate the name of God and then support Islam and support the Muslims. Well, debates usually end up in terrible consequences. Or, it ends up, having people separate from each other and have ill feelings towards each other. So maybe your intention is good, but the action might not be the best way to approach this topic of differences and diversity in a society. Maybe sitting down and trying to learn from them, trying to have them teach us their religion and their faith, and us teach them our religion and our faith, so that there's a better understanding of each other, so that we can build more respect for each other. That might be the best course of action instead of the first one. So there are many scenarios, many options that we can look at and basically try to understand whether the intention is what counts or the action is what counts. Now, the action has a lot of importance and a lot of emphasis. And there's a hadith where the Imams ﷺ talk about people who willed good, but their outcome was bad. And the reason the outcome was bad is because they never thought their action through. And that doesn't justify, the outcome. It was bad, but the intention was good. It doesn't justify the bad outcome. People are also responsible for the outcome that is caused, just as they are responsible for the intention of the action. So what is required is that we have a good intention and we study very well the action that we take based on that intention in order for the action to be the best of actions, and in order for us to avoid harm being done. We're responsible for the action just as much as we are responsible for the intention as well. Now, when it comes to the Battle of Karbala, and tonight is the night that is dedicated to the warriors and the companions of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The companions of the Imam had the purest of intentions, and they performed the best of actions, because the Imam gave the option to his companions before they arrived to Karbala and even after they arrived. And he told them, you may take your families and go home. You don't have to die with me. And a lot of people had good intentions, even those that left. They wanted to protect their family. They wanted to maintain the security of their family members, whether it was their women or their children. So their intentions might not have been bad, but the course of action that they took might not have been the best course of action. Had they remained with the Imam alayhi salam, that would have been described as the best of actions. But they left. And during that moment, they had to make a decision. And having this principle in our minds helps us in trying to determine which action is the best course of action to take. So the companions of the Imams had loyalty. They had courage. They had piety. They had reached the highest levels of faith. One of these companions was named Muslim bin Awsaja. He was a companion of the Prophet. He was a Sahabi. And he was one of the closest companions to Imam alayhi salam, and he never left the Imam's side. He was always with him. He fought with him multiple battles, including the Battle of Jamal, the Battle of Siffin, and the Battle of Nahrawan. Everybody, if you look at biographers, who wrote about him in history, he was praised by everybody as a God-fearing individual, as a very pious man, as someone who was ascetic, someone who was not attached to this world. And this is how the companions of the Imam Hussain alayhi salam were. Nobody in that battle who fought with Imam Hussain alayhi salam fought for worldly reasons. There was nothing worldly in the battle to be won by the followers of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Everybody knew that eventually they were going to die. And the Imam told them, whoever comes with me is going to be martyred. There's no worldly gain. So everybody who stayed with him stayed for a spiritual reason, stayed for God, because there was nothing material to be gained. And that shows us that they were all very sincere individuals, and not just a normal level of sincerity and piety, the highest, because they knew for sure that they're not getting anything out of this, and yet they chose to remain, and they chose to fight with the Imam, because they chose God and the hereafter over this world. When Imam Hussain alayhi salam gave permission to his companions to leave, first of all, there was a group that went out and attacked, about 50 individuals. After they were martyred, the companions began leaving one by one and fighting one by one. The first person to come out was Muslim bin Awsaja. And at that time, the Imam reminded his companions, and he told them, you still have the chance to go back. If anybody of you feels that he doesn't want to go through with this, he may go back. Muslim, when he heard this, he told the Imam alayhi salam, by God, if I knew that I would be killed, then revived again, then burnt to death, then revived again, then cut into pieces, and this would be done to me 70 times, meaning many, many times, over and over again, I will never leave you. Look at the amount of dedication. Look at the amount of devotion and love that this individual had. He would die, and not just a normal death. He's saying, if I was to be cut into pieces, if I was to be burnt alive, and this was done to me over and over and over again, I would never leave your side. I would never let go of you. This is a sign of true piety and true faith and true devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and true love for the messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Muslim was the first of the companions who went out to fight. And he fought very courageously. And then he was killed. Imam Hussain alayhi salam walked up to him, and he would do this to all of his companions that died. He would go to them, and he would sit by their side, and he would pray for them. Imam Hussain went with his companion Habib ibn Mudahir, and he stood above his head, and he recited the following verse, among them are those who have fulfilled their vow, and among them are those who wait, and they have not changed in the least. Then Habib told Muslim, had I not known that I'm following in your path, meaning that had I not known that I'm also going to be martyred, I would have asked you to give me your will so that I may pass it on to your family and fulfill it. But because I'm going to die, I'm not able to ask you for this will. I'm going to be dead after you. But Muslim turned around to Habib and he told him, and he pointed to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and he said, my will is that you die and you take care of Imam Hussein alayhi salam after my death. I have no other will in this world. Don't leave this world without protecting him. Stay by his side and die before him. Habib replied to him, by the Lord of the Kaaba, I shall assuredly do that. This amount of devotion, this amount of love, that Muslim was not even thinking about his family or thinking about anything other than Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He was not seeing anything in front of him but Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Even in the moments of death, the last moments of death, he was covered with blood and he was breathing his last breaths. What does a person think in that moment? What comes to your mind? You're leaving this world. And he completely forgets himself. He completely forgets anything related to him. And all he can think of, and all he is able to think of, is his love and devotion to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because the Imam is filled, his heart is filled with the love of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us this type of sincerity and purity of hearts, to be able to realize, the direction that we have to be headed towards, and the love and devotion that we have to have towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.